this time, I'd like to call this month's meeting of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission Certificate of Appropriateness meeting to order. I'm sorry, I forgot to do your countdown. Sorry, do you want me to do it now?
Yes.
I can count it down.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm gonna count us down to start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now I will call the meeting to order once more for the Certificate of Appropriateness meeting. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Please note that the time is 5:04 on today, August 8th. If you have not done so already, please sign in up here at the front. We also are going to ask that each of you all, if you are here to speak today, in addition to being sworn in, we ask that you would keep your mask on and just speak loudly and clearly into the mic. Okay. With that, we'll do the roll call. Is that somebody from staff want to do that?
Sorry, no, I'm not prepared. Okay. Do you want to do it? I don't have a list in front of me. I know everyone's name. Vershay Height.
Here.
Curtis Casafang.
Here.
Janine McAuliffe.
Here.
John Reese.
Here.
Sandy Feaster is excused. Ian Dunn.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Great. Thank you. Okay. And just to give you all a little bit more information about our commission and who is sitting in front of you, we are a group of residences of historic districts, architects, intern architects, and architect consultants, contractors, attorneys, historians, urban planners, and historic preservationists. With that, I'll ask everyone to kind of go around and introduce themselves. I'll start with Ian.
Ian Dunn. I work at the State Archives of North Carolina, and I'm a Raleigh historian.
I'm Janine McAuliffe, and my background is in architecture. I'm a residential designer here in Raleigh.
I'm Francis Raspberry. I'm not a member of the commission, but I am legal counsel to the COA committee.
My name is Vershay Height. I'm a licensed architect here in North Carolina, and I practice in downtown Raleigh.
I'm Curtis Casafang. I'm a resident of Oakwood. I work as a theater consultant, and I'm also past commissioner, so I'm back on for another round.
I'm John Reese. I am a licensed architect in North Carolina, and I am a resident of the Glenwood, Brooklyn Residential District.
Okay. Thank you all for that. Okay. So first I would like to entertain a motion to waive the reading of the minutes, assuming that all of the commissioners have had a chance to review those and that there are no amendments to be made.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right. And if I could have a motion to adopt the minutes from our last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Great, thanks. And that motion passes? Yes? Yeah, okay. All right. Let's see. How many minor work orders?
I don't know off the top of my head. How many minor works were there, Erin? I believe there were 9. I can check.
Okay.
Seven.
Okay, thank you, Erin. All right, so I just want to note that there were 7 minor work applications processed by staff in the past month. And with that, we are now ready to hear applications. Prior to the meeting, notice has been sent to property owners within 100 feet of the properties in question. Legal ad placed and signage has been posted at the site. Commission members received a copy of each application, staff reports, and were to have visited each property. Staff reports were made publicly available with the agenda. North Carolina law provides that major work applications must be approved in an evidentiary hearing and that persons have an opportunity to address an application if they desire. I'll just verify there are no summary proceedings for this month. Okay, great. All right. No, that's still summary. Okay. Let's see then. Can I Have a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Great. All right, and that motion is accepted. Let's see. Oh, we need, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? And that is unanimous.
Did we do that on the minutes?
No. Okay. Sorry. Do you just want me to skip back to it really quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so we still have Janine, McAuliffe, and Curtis Case-Fang having made the motion. We just need to
Okay.
vote.
Great. All those in favor of approving the minutes from our July meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and that is unanimous. Okay. Okay. Let's see. All right. We are now ready to conduct the evidentiary hearing phase of the meeting. Evidentiary hearings are conducted in a quasi-judicial format. During the hearing, we receive evidence to determine the proposed changes are not incongruous with the special character of the district or historic property. We review this evidence against guidelines referenced in the city ordinance before issuing a certificate. Each application is heard in the same way as listed in the meeting procedure handout. The quasi-format of the hearing requires that we be impartial. The written staff reports are evidence presented just as any other evidence and were made available to us, the applicants, and the public at the same time. If any of us have had any reason to discuss the specific details of an application before today, we will ask to be excused from hearing that application. There is no time limit to testimony, but repetition is discouraged. Because of the quasi-judicial format of our hearings, that is, the commission hears the evidence and then judges whether the change is or is not incongruous, we are required by North Carolina law to affirm or swear persons that speak before the commission and offer evidence. Speakers will be affirmed at the beginning of each case. Okay, start. All right. Okay, and so with that, do we have anyone representing case COA 00112020, 517 South Person Street? Please. Okay. Let's see. Are you all going to be speaking? Okay, great. Okay. Can I have the first person's name? Okay. Toby Coleman, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Great. Thank you. Okay. You heard that? Did you get that for the record? I had a little trouble hearing. Okay, great. All right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Great. Thank you. Timothy Robbins, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Great. Thank you. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Colette. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I probably need to get for the record that the staff member was sworn in along with those who offered their names.
Yes. Staff member was sworn in along with those who offered their names.
So Raz, I believe this is a question for you because we have not had this in a while. They have one affidavit as well. At what point do we typically enter those into the record?
I'm sorry, can you try that one more time?
The
The mask makes it challenging.
sorry. The applicants have one affidavit that they would like to enter. At what point in the process do we accept those?
It's not critical. Typically, particularly with council present, the council could request that particular items be added into the record, be noted officially as part of the record in the case. So I think it's in their discretion.
Okay, so whenever you, yeah. All right. So as Rashay mentioned, this is case COA 0011-2020 for 517 South Person Street. It is in the Prince Hall Historic District, which is a general historic overlay district. The nature of the request is, after the fact, alter a parking lot, install lights, and install signage. This is a view of the property from South Person Street, slightly across the street here. This is a view just at the end of the driveway on Person Street. On the sidewalk, looking towards the property to the south. And these two photographs were taken last year, but provide a detailed view of the light poles and the car stops. Staff's suggestion is to approve the installation of light fixtures with conditions and to deny the expansion of the parking area with conditions. And the applicants do have a presentation as well.
Please.
Good afternoon, Commission members. Toby Coleman. I am here on behalf of the landowner Haas Holdings. I have a relatively thick binder of evidence. It's all summarized in this PowerPoint, but I would like to go ahead and hand that out for the purposes of establishing the record for this case.
Sure, please do.
Does everybody have one? As I said, I will, so I guess a couple things just to start out. I will obviously sort of note some of the items as we go. And then the other thing is obviously because we are in a mass situation, if at any point you can't hear me, please tell me and I will speak up, I promise. So as Colette stated, there's really two issues here. One is a question of parking lot gravel. There's, as I'm going to detail, long story short, this has been a parking lot. There's no question this has been a parking lot for 2 decades. The question is how extensive is the parking lot? In other words, how extensive is the gravel? And I'll detail a little bit more, but that's the issue, and that's where we're going to spend a lot of time. The other issue, as Colette noted, is there's 2 light poles, light fixtures that have been installed. We are seeking a COA for approval of those because this property is in the Prince Hall HOD. As you all know, Prince Hall is a bit of a unique HOD among the 8, I believe, historic overlay districts here in Raleigh because it is a mixed-use overlay district. And so here, I think you've seen some of the pictures that Colette provided. This is just another picture of the parking lot. We do have a survey of the property in tab 2, and it tells you basically what you can see with your eyes, which is that this is a parking lot. So you all received the staff report as part of it, and I'll note one of the notes on page 1 is that adding gravel to existing gravel is considered routine maintenance and does not require a COA. We've had some discussions with staff in advance of this, and I think basically where staff came down is if you can provide evidence, they think it's important, and I guess we agree to this extent, that if we can establish that there was gravel there before, then either a COA, or either a certificate of appropriateness would either not be necessary because it's just maintenance, or it would further prove that it is appropriate in this context. Staff agrees that some portion, it's not clear where staff would draw the line as to what can be maintained and what should be removed. The staff report, I believe, says, I don't want to get anything wrong here, so let me look at it. I think it says, I think they estimate roughly a third, but they don't.
It states 2/3.
2/3 have been gravelled, and a third has not. And we'll talk a little bit about what the staff's evidence is for that, but they have pretty limited evidence. We wanted to, again, we are presenting this binder because we wanted to present the fulsome evidence to show that the entire parcel has been gravelled. So a quick brief history of the site. I couldn't let the opportunity go while in front of this board to include a copy of Schaefer's map at tab 3. Just because this property is on Schaefer's map. It's lot 13. It's part of lot 13. But the actual history here is much more recent. The property was purchased by a gentleman named George Exum, who was married, so his wife also owned it with him in 1981. There was a home on it at the time. We've got the deeds in the Wake County history in tabs 4 and 5. The home was demolished in 1999, and at that point, the Exum family converted the property to a gravel parking lot. And at this point, I'd like to go ahead and raise the issue of the affidavit. So in the front pocket of your binder is a copy of an affidavit from Wida Exum. Now I'm going to hand Colette, this is the original copy. Miss Exum has been dealing with sciatica and informed us that she, I guess, had surgery, outpatient surgery yesterday, and so informed us she could not make it today. And that's why we have presented this affidavit. The affidavit is only, as you can see, is a pretty limited affidavit, basically stating her knowledge and recollection while she was the owner of the property, or her family was owner of the property, as to its use as a parking lot and the extent of the gravel. So we would request that be entered into the record.
Sorry, really quickly, not to interrupt you. Francis, could you clarify for the commission how this kind of weighs into our considerations in this case?
It's an item of evidence. It's been tendered as an item of evidence to be considered along with all the other. Though it is an affidavit, and of course the individual is not here to be cross-examined, I don't see anything in the affidavit that is particularly pivotal or inconsistent with anything in the staff report, or that I would think I should point out to you should have any concern over. It's your call as to whether you accept it, since it is, it is an affidavit, and the giver of the affidavit's not here. But I honestly don't see any particular issue that I would feel I'd need to raise with you on that question.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying. Please proceed.
Okay. I would, again, I would, part of the reason I raised this in advance, as Raz probably can understand, is that to the extent that this commission does not, determines that it will not accept it into evidence, we would ask for a continuance of this hearing. Just to save everybody the time and effort, I would go ahead and request that the commission make that decision now.
I think to accept it would be generally consistent with your practices concerning similar items of evidence in the past.
Do we need a motion or anything, or is
You
it
could
just?
just indicate that as chairperson, you would, unless there is an objection, have the item admitted into evidence.
Okay. Unless there is any objection from any of the commissioners, we will have this item, this affidavit entered into evidence.
Thank you. Sorry for the sidebar there, but
No problem.
thought it would probably save everybody a little time.
A quick
Sorry.
question
Yes.
for the chair. Does it make sense for us to rapidly discuss the first half of the application regarding the gravel? Because it renders moot the bulk of the evidence, since if we accept the fact that it's been graveled over its whole history, it's a maintenance issue and not subject to a COA.
I'm fine with that. I know that in the past we have allowed the applicant to kind of make that decision as far as what you would like to kind of continue to proceed, or we can begin our discussion now.
So I guess, so long as we're not waiving our right to present further evidence, to the extent the board wants to discuss that, if they feel that that might make the proceedings be more efficient, we're more than happy to allow that to happen.
Great.
Do you have any questions for the applicant first before we?
With regard to graveling the driveway, no.
Okay, right. Are there, so I think what, I'm just gonna talk here. What we'll do is we will close the public hearing for now. We have the opportunity to open it back up so that you all can provide further comment as you hear our internal discussion. Okay, so at this point I will close the public hearing and turn to internal discussion. Curtis, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, I mean, it's just given the affidavit as new evidence, and looking at the staff comments, which are pointing out to us that if they were adding gravel to an existing gravel lot, it does not require a COA. It leaves us with the only question being the installation of the site lighting, which is, I think, is a much quicker conversation. So I'd like to suggest that if we accept this affidavit, which we have said we do, that we just skip to staff report item B, the question on the site lighting, as sort of the entirety of the application now, since the first half is kind of moot.
Okay.
And I can put that in motion form if you'd like.
Absolutely.
But
Is there any further comment from any other commissioners?
Let me just make this point.
Please do.
Madam Chair, I did not read the affidavit carefully enough, and I'm glad Curtis caught this. Indeed, item 5 does have the affiant saying that the whole property had been gravelled, and that does go to a key issue in
yes,
determining whether this is a minor maintenance item or whether, in fact, it's been an expansion that keeps the COA process alive. If you receive it, there needs to be some evidence in rebuttal under North Carolina law, or the law is such that it almost needs to be accepted as true if you receive it, if there is no evidence contra to that point. So I guess I would say tread carefully on that, since it is so key to one of the main issues
yeah.
in the case.
I guess I would just say that my understanding of North Carolina law is that it's not that you necessarily need to accept it as true, but rather that our burden is a burden of production and not of persuasion. And so to the extent that there is no evidence contra, the burden of all we have to do is present evidence. And whether you accept it in your mind as true or false or whatever, that is sufficient for the bar of obtaining approval under quasi-judicial hearing.
I think Mr. Coleman and I could have a debate on that point. Because there is some fairly recent law on that very important issue. I would urge caution to you on that at this point. It is probably quite credible evidence, I imagine, that if Mrs. Exum appeared, she would probably corroborate that, and there would probably be no independent evidence to disprove that. I think the staff report indicates that I don't think that exists at this point, other than perhaps some aerial photos. So again, it is your all's call, but I would urge caution on the affidavit, given the fact that it does address a pretty important point in the case.
Well, and I think when we're looking at the aerial photographs, we're seeing evidence in the photographs which are probably, well, actually they all apparently have been shot in the winter without much tree coverage. I think we're seeing evidence of sort of the waxing and waning of grass overgrowth in the lot, but I don't think that's in any way dispositive. I don't think it suggests that it wasn't a gravel covered lot, just that it hadn't been maintained to keep the overgrowth down.
there any further comment from the commission? If not, can we, is this the time to entertain a motion, or do we need to start discussing item B?
I don't think we should get a motion yet on the whole COA application, because I think we need to talk about the installed lighting just to get a couple of more facts.
I would just suggest that you could receive it and hold judgment on whether it is admitted into evidence as part of the record in the case, if that would facilitate keeping the proceeding going, as an alternative to saying the case either is moved for continuance now until Ms. Exum is present. That's just a suggestion. Receive it, consider it, but hold judgment on whether it would be accepted as evidence in the case until you hear more.
Is there any peril in not hearing Ms. Exum directly and using the affidavit?
Oh, no, sir. No peril. It's just a matter of trying to keep things moving and trying to be accommodating.
Okay.
Yes, and obviously we are, sorry, go ahead, Chair.
I mean, let me open the public hearing once again so that you're able to speak. So the public hearing is now reopened for the case.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of, so noted on the gravel, we do think that to the extent that this board decided that this was a maintenance issue and the extent of gravel, we would request a finding of that to that extent. I think that would then give staff what they need to be able to say, all right, this is not a required for either a minor or major COA. Colette can probably confirm or correct me on that. All right. Moving forward, so Rita Exum did say that as has been noted, the whole property's been gravelled for 20 years and used as a parking lot. And the only other thing to note is that in 2000, this was part of a larger rezoning. I did take a look, tried to figure out a little bit more. Raz may remember it, but probably not. It's been too long. It's part of like a 9-acre parcel. It was probably a city motivated rezoning. But they rezoned this property and a number of other properties in the neighborhood to residential business, which is an old designation, but basically allowed for sort of more mixed use before we had the mixed use designations in our code. And that did allow for a parking lot. So the timing of that rezoning coincides with when Ms. Exum says that the house was demolished and the rezoning happened. I do have, so in the packet, as has been noted, starting at tab 6 and 6A is, and going through tab 6C, is every single satellite photo we could pull from iMaps. And as has already been noted, yeah, what you see is a waxing and waning of the vegetation, particularly on the east side. I sort of have compared it to a beach in some of my conversations, sort of the waves. But this is from 2004, and as you can see, the most of the property there is not vegetated, and is again is evidence that the property was fully used for parking. One of the points that staff made, we just wanted to address it head on. Was the report, the 2011 report designating Prince Hall as an HOD. On page 19, it notes that in the last quarter of the 20th century and the first decade of the 21st, there's revitalization downtown, and deteriorated or obsolete structures have been demolished for new construction and parking lots. We did have some great maps. I'm hoping, let's see, I'm finding it, yeah. So I'm going to hand this over to Ashkan in a second, but and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but if you look at tab 7, there's actually, what we've done is we actually identified all of the gravel parking lots that were in this 4-block historic overlay district at the time it was designated as a historic overlay district in 2012. And what you see is, I think, about 12 lots. I counted up the acreage. This is just gravel. This doesn't include paved parking lots. But because of its proximity to downtown, there's a fair amount. A lot of them are actually associated with churches and other uses. What you see is about 2 acres or about 10% of the HOD at the time it was created was in gravel parking lots. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Ashkan Hussaini, the owner of the property. He's going to talk a little bit about his history with improving the parking lot since he took ownership in late 2015. Ashkan.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashkan Hussaini. Address is 602 East South Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601. My family and I work and live in the East Raleigh neighborhood. My father and I restore, build, and develop properties in the downtown area. Although the purchase process began in 2014 for the subject property, we ended up closing on it October 28th, 2015. We bought the property for many reasons. It was in the downtown business district. It had commercial zoning for future development, and it was already set up as a parking lot. Shortly after closing on the lot, we received a notice of violation from the city regarding the grass being overgrown towards the back. My father then had our landscaper come out, take care of the grass, and spread a layer of gravel on the entire lot. That was the first time we re-graveled it. To our surprise, the fresh gravel layer didn't keep the weeds from coming up for very long, especially without the use of herbicides. Now the lot slopes toward the back from the street, and the whole block has a crater-like formation that slopes from the north, east, and west of the block towards the middle of that block, directly to the back of the directly to the back portion of our property. See, how do I go to the next slide? Okay, sorry, not yet. And there is I think there is a topography map from iMaps in the binder. Did you include that? No. Oh, okay. Well, it's public knowledge. It's on iMaps. You can see that the back portion of the lot is the lowest point on that whole block where all the water is going to drain. The further back you go on the lot, the more water is absorbed. The more water, the more weeds, and the faster those weeds grow. After that, life happened and things got busy. In addition to other projects we were working on in 2016 and 2017, I spent a considerable amount of time contracting and physically building my own personal home, or me and my wife's personal home. 2017 marked the birth of our first child, Ari, whom I took care of part of the week. The lot continued to be used as a parking lot, but the weeds toward the back slowly got out of hand again. Fast forward to 2019, and serious talks began with McLaurin and Secure Parking to take over the management of the lot. We ended up going with Secure Parking, and since they manage many of the other gravel lots in the area, they recommended going with an experienced contractor to re-gravel the lot and add tire stops. As anyone in this room who has children knows, most kids love construction sites, construction equipment, trains, planes, and anything of the sort. I happened to find this picture I took of my son Ari in front of the site during construction. This was after weeds and their roots had been scraped, but before any fresh gravel had been added. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Tim Robbins, who's the president and owner of ArborMax and was contracted to do the work.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Robbins. I'm a board-certified master arborist and president of ArborMax Tree Service and Americrane LLC. Ashkan is a good client of mine. I've worked with him for a decade now. He called me in 2019 to say, hey, listen, I've got this place that we've had a few years. We've put a light little bit of gravel over it. Can you come and look and see what you can do to freshen it up? I get out there. I notice some smaller vegetation in the back, small liquid amber styrosiflua, mulberry, volunteers from the neighbors' properties coming in. some crabgrass, a lot of just ordinary vegetation that you're going to see accumulate over time. And I had a probe rod because I like to check densities anytime I'm going to do a grading job. As you can see, the soil is consistent throughout the entire property. The aggregate is consistent throughout the entire property. And there is, without no question, any doubt, any hesitation in my mind, I can tell you that the day that I arrived on the site, there was aggregate beneath an organic layer in the 2/3 of the eastern corner, but there was pure, without a doubt, 100% evidence that it was a gravel parking lot at one time. Now, the amount of organic material that had decomposed over the past decade or 15 years, I'm no agronomist, and I don't study the decomposition of organic material, but I can tell you that it had been some time. But there was fractured stones that come from a quarry. It wasn't anything that's that you'd find in a normal soil profile anywhere in the downtown area. You can see that there's some minor changes. If you look at the topography on this, there is a little tiny bit of change, maybe a fluctuation of 1 or 2% in the grade. As Ashkan stated, everything flows to the back, and with that flowing, you get the seeds, the weeds, the everything, and it builds up over time. I can tell you, as a matter of fact, there was a pile of stone, crushed asphalt, and tires in the back left corner that I can remember vividly, without any question, in the back left corner, in a small little grouping where some homeless people had cleared out a little small area and were having little fires there, and it wasn't on organic material, it was on an aggregate type surface. So we cleared small vegetation and brought in just a bare minimum amount to dress the top of it up. The vegetation organic layer I took off was maybe 2 inches on the east side, and then we installed a very thin layer of stone. It's apparent, it's obvious. There's no question in my mind that it was 100% a parking lot from well before. When did you get it? 2015, 2016? A long time before that. The organic material built up on top. You think about your own yard. 2 inches of dirt over your driveway when your grass grows over your driveway. If you don't edge it, that's probably what you get. 10 years, 15 years. So there's no questions that in my mind that it was a gravel parking lot from beginning to end.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. I
Yep.
appreciate it. Okay. If there's nothing else from the applicant, is there anything else?
So this is the after, by the way. You saw this earlier. Just a couple notes. We are prepared to give you more testimony on this, but I'm not sure that this commission needs at this point. I don't want to do overkill. I do want to note that that Mr. Husseini did get very interested in the nature of vegetation overgrowth of gravel lots in this area after this issue came up, and since he's had the entire pandemic to think about it, he took some pictures. This is the best example. That's 425 South Person Street, which is just up the street, freshly graveled in March 2020. You can see Mr. Husseini's picture of it in August 2021. The gravel gets overgrown pretty quickly in these parts. And again, here's just further photographs. You can see here the aggregate, sort of gravel and aggregate in between, and where the vegetation is grown up on the outside of the curb stops. We did want to go ahead and address, staff did raise 3 issues for incongruity. So to the extent that you find that this is something that needs a COA consideration, we did want to just at least address them. 2 of the issues identified by staff are in section 1.3.8 and 1.5.7 of the guidelines. In this case, we think both those sections are inapplicable, and we did go ahead and provide copies of those in tab 11. But 1.3 is site features and plantings. 1.5 is walkways, driveways, and off-street parking. The two sections that are referenced both say that that they relate to residential historic districts. 1.3.8 says, in residential historic districts, it's not appropriate to alter the character of the district, the residential character of the district, by significantly reducing the proportion of original built area to open space. That's not applicable here. The Prince Hall Historic Overlay District is a unique mixed-use district, according to the RHDC. I have up there, and it's also in your binder. If you look at all of the special character overlay, character essays that were part of the approval, as well as the RHDC's own website on this, they call it a mixed-use district. The second is just that there was staff says that this is incongruous with 1.5.5, which says new walkways, driveways, and off-street parking should be compatible in location, patterns, spacing, etc., with other parts of the historic district. There's sort of two ways to read that. Either it has to be consistent with other parts of the historic district that contribute, or just overall character. Again, regardless of which way you go, this district, when it was created in 2012, had a lot of existing gravel parking lots. All those gravel parking lots basically were like what we have here at 517 South Person. They took up the entire lot. They had aggregate on them, and in many cases had some sort of security lighting. We've identified those there, and in your packet, again in tab 7, we have more details on what the specific addresses. And if there are any questions on that, I can take a pause. If folks would like to do that, I'm ready to move on to the light issue.
Are there any questions from the commission? No. Okay, please proceed.
Sure. So the second issue, as Colette identified, is that there's two lights on 25-foot tall gray fiberglass poles. There are LED lights installed by Duke on basically, I think, what the staff report calls a Cobra head style head. Again, we've got the specs. They're in tab 12. It's basically relatively skinny. And I apologize, I don't have the specific picture there in the PowerPoint, so my apologies for that. But if you look in tab 12, A and B are the specs. One is from Duke, and the other is from the underlying manufacturer. It is a relatively skinny head. I don't think that there's a specific issue, but Colette could correct me if I'm wrong. As I understand it, staff's main concern, I think, is with pedestrian height, with the height of the pole, and not with the actual light style. Although I think there was some commentary about the warmth of the light. This is a 4,000, according to the specs, a 4,000 Kelvin light. And the issue, and we've got a lighting study. The reason for the two taller poles versus pedestrian sort of shorter poles is so that the parking lot can have a coverage that is covers it entirely without having a whole bunch of extra light poles. That's on tab 13 is the Duke Energy lighting study. Again, the issue here under the guidelines, according to staff's report, is consistency. This is again something where we've submitted in the record. It's in the packet that you all received, but we did also include it in tab 14. A map that identifies both in and around the HOD a number of instances of both wood and fiberglass light poles 25 feet or taller with these Cobra head style lights, some of them LEDs. LED is obviously the newfangled thing. Duke is going to those. They no longer install the old style lights. Some of the old style lights are still remain in the HOD. the staff report basically says, as I understand it, what the staff report says is that those lights, they acknowledge that these are the ones that we've identified as being within the HOD do in fact exist within the HOD, but staff says, well, they were either installed prior to the HOD designation or without a COA. There is nothing in the design guidelines that provides that you should only consider lights installed after the historic overlay designation. And nor is there any evidence other than the absence of a COA that anything was installed improperly or without a COA. Again, I think that as I understand it and as I read the plain language of the design guidelines for in 1.7 and 1.5, we just have to establish, we have to present evidence that's consistent with what exists in the current HOD. Again, this is not this is a HOD that is different in many ways from some of the HODs that are seeking to preserve a certain design from a certain era. This, by definition, when you look at the essays, is a mixed-use HOD where by definition, when you look at the special character essay, there are examples of different types of architecture and development over time. And one of the features of this HOD, when it was designated as an HOD in 2012, was it had a lot of these lights. It was a downtown adjacent area. And so, again, I think we have met the requirement as stated. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Are there any questions from the commission?
Yeah, are you saying that the lights pre-existed, lights were installed on the property prior to the designation?
No, we're not saying that. So we do acknowledge that we installed the lights in 2019 or 2020. Duke Energy did on our behalf, on the client's behalf. But what we were saying is that that we have pointed out a number of examples where there are, both on parking lots and in rights of ways within the HOD, there are 25-foot tall pole lights, sort of urban nature pole lights. And the staff's only statement on that is, well, those existed either before the HOA or you didn't issue a certificate of appropriateness for them. And my point is just, that's not relevant.
That's my question is, were those lights in those other examples done prior to the HOD? Because that is the bind with which we are to make a decision.
Right. I mean, I don't know that we know specifically. We've just pointed out examples within the.
What's that? Oh, sorry.
I did hear you. You were asking, do we know when the other lights were installed? We do not. I don't believe the staff report has any information on that either.
Correct. No, the staff report does not have any information on that. The staff's comment is in response to the applicant's evidence provided, just simply to note that we do not have any information from a COA to give you examples from that conversation. There was no COA in our records, and it appears that some of them, based on, street view images, potentially predated the district. So essentially we were just saying that we don't have any comparative information to provide you.
Okay.
A question for staff. The 16-foot height that you call out, is that based on previous COAs? Where does that number come from?
Yes, previous COAs, and also that's a typical pedestrian scale size light.
But other site lighting have included 16-foot tall things, has been approved in the past.
Yes, not in the Prince Hall district
Right.
specifically.
But in other historic districts?
Correct.
Okay.
Another question for staff. Is this the first parking lot that we're dealing with in the Prince Hall district?
Yes.
So basically, this is a bellwether for how we proceed in the future, I would think, in terms of, do we consider this a scenario where we draw the line and we make down the law of what is now versus what was then, and how we proceed in the future. This could be used as a precedent setting for other cases as they come up. Am I correct?
That depends on whether you find that the parking lot existed previously or if it's considered a new parking lot. I think those would be two very different scenarios.
Okay.
Good.
Any further questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At
I
this-
would move that that our binder and our PowerPoint, which is in the binder, be entered in as evidence.
Thank you. Okay. All right, at this point, I'll close the public.
Madam Chair, before you close the hearing, I
Yes.
just probably for the
Please.
record, it just might be worth mentioning to the members if there are any questions of the other witnesses that spoke in addition to Mr. Coleman that you might want to ask, since they did address some issues that were in dispute. If you have questions for the witnesses, I didn't hear any at the time, but just in case that opportunity is there.
Okay. Are there any other questions for any of the other witnesses?
I have a side question that may or may not be appropriate. Part of this application is dealing with signage. I've seen no presentation on any kind of signage or anything relative to a staff report relative to the signage.
The only signage on the site is the image that I showed in my presentation, the secure
Okay.
pole sign.
Okay.
That's-
Okay.
At the rear of the site.
Okay.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
That's fine. I just wanted to clear that up in terms of, because I don't see it anywhere in the report. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing and turn to internal discussion.
Evidence in opposition. Any opposition
Oh,
speakers or presenters?
sorry. Is there anyone present that is here to speak in opposition of this application? Okay, thank you. All right, public hearing is closed. Curtis, do you have any comments? I see it in your eyes.
No, I'm always willing to talk. I mean, to me, we have an affidavit and we have testimony that says that the parking lot was gravel covered prior to any change here. So I don't see that as a COA item, based on the guidelines and based on the law, the history. Which the thing it brings me around to are the light fixture choice. The evidence does show that the fixtures are 4,000 Kelvin, which is a bluish light. And during my visit, I noted that it was not a very full spectrum 4,000 Kelvin either. It didn't render colors very well. So that's my observation. So I don't see anything that I would look to change in terms of those staff comments. The height of the pole, higher than 16 feet, hearing testimony from staff that those have been approved in other HODs on sites, in parking areas in particular. I think that's an important piece of evidence into the mix that says the 16-foot is where we are historically, and approving a 25-foot would be a precedent-setting change. The question is, how do we feel about that, right? How does that comport with the guidelines? And the guidelines are kind of silent on pole heights, other than it says something about residential character.
The 1.7.8 talks about pedestrian scale.
Yeah, pedestrian scale poles, exactly.
Which 25 feet is not.
So I think the question there before us is, well, I don't think there is a question. I think that's what we're left with. I don't think there's anything that addresses a larger parking lot in here.
Yeah.
The street lighting is not regulated through COA, so that's not a question, or not a piece of evidence that's pertinent, I think. The other thing I'd like to just throw out to the committee is the staff recommendation of the color of the light be 25 or 3,500 degrees Kelvin or warmer is lacks a bottom constraint and lacks a character of light constraint. And I believe the intent of talking about the color of the color temperature was to try and get a quality of light that was characteristic of the districts during their period of significance, which would have been either an incandescent or a halogen fixture, which would put the color temperature between 2,800 degrees Kelvin and 3,500 degrees Kelvin. And it also would mean that the light would be a fuller spectrum light, which means it would have a color rendering index of 80 plus and be full spectrum, or there's a second metric that's coming into use now called TM30 RF, and that would also be an 80 plus metric. Both of those tell you that with all that information that the full spectrum is present in the light, which would be, again, characteristic of a halogen fixture or an incandescent fixture, which is what we're trying to mimic here, right? So I'd like to suggest that perhaps we change that condition, since they're changing the light to get it down to the appropriate color temperature anyhow, to be a little more specific and therefore enforceable. The downside to not having the bottom end of the range is a sodium vapor fixture would be considered warmer.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the goal.
Got John?
I think where I come down on this is that this is an after-the-fact application. If we were to have seen this in an application that was prior to have been implemented, we would have required the lighting to be what we are discussing. At the same time, I think that we didn't discuss the screening. I don't really see anywhere in here where there seems to have been an issue with the screening, because it does, in terms of the other surrounding properties. But I do think that because this is the first gravel parking lot in this district, and it is a scenario where we are setting a standard, I think, by what decisions we make here. While I feel for the owner in terms of having to go back and redo the lighting, that choice of lighting would have been different had we seen this prior to it have been installed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm falling into the staff recommendations here with the amendments that Curtis is making to follow through.
I'll add too, I mean, we know that our charge is not to acknowledge the fact that it's an after the fact. We're addressing this as a new request.
Right.
And once we make the motion, it may trigger something that would not normally happen, right? It would have been a different choice that would have been selected at that point as opposed to a change out. But I'm in agreement with the color rendering index and the comments about what's the appropriate Kelvin. 4,000 I know can be exceptionally cool. And also the height of that coming down from 25 feet.
Ian, do you have any comments?
No, nothing further.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm hearing alignment. So would someone like to try a motion?
I'm happy to give it a shot.
Go ahead.
I've been editing as we go here. Okay. I move that based on the evidence that's been presented in the application and during the evidentiary hearing, the committee finds that one, the subject lot has been 100% graveled. since prior to designation, therefore replenishing the gravel is not subject to a COA, citing fact one, affidavit dated 8/24/21 from Avita Exum states that the whole property is gravelled for 20 years, and fact two, that from contractor gave testimony, if we can pull his name into the record, that the property was found to be fully gravel covered prior to adding any gravel to it. And B, installing lighting is not incongruous in concept according to the guidelines sections 1.3.1, 1.3.9, 1.3.11, 1.7.4, 0.5, 0.8, 0.9, and 11. However, installing lighting incompatible with the human scale is incongruous according to guidelines sections 1.3.9, 1.7.4, 0.8, 0.11. Citing the following facts, referencing the state's suggestions, facts 1, 2, 3, changing fact 5 to the lights are LED, color temperature is 4,000 degrees Kelvin, citing fact 6, 7, adding fact 8, satellite photos and evidence show no lights on the site prior to the installation of these. Adding fact 9, 16-foot poles have been improved in other historic overlay districts.
Gotcha. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll second his motion.
Any discussion? Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that is unanimous. Thank you all for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you
whoops,
gotta-
sorry. What do I need to do? Just kidding.
The second
Wait.
half of that.
Okay.
Second half.
I move that the certificate of appropriateness be approved with the following conditions. One, I'm going to just renumber these so they make sense. That the light poles be no taller than 16 feet. 2, that the light fixtures be of a simple design of residential character. 3, that the color of the light be between 2,000 degrees Kelvin and 3,500 degrees Kelvin with a color rendering index of either 80 or higher and a full spectrum fixture, or a TM30 RF color rendering index of 80 plus. And cite fact condition 4, that the details and specifications for replacement lighting fixtures be provided to and approved by the commission prior to installation. And 5, that the replacement light fixtures be installed within 120 days of the date of this decision.
Can I make a friendly amendment to that? Rather than being approved by the commission, approved by staff?
That's fine by me. I accept that
Acceptable.
amendment.
Okay.
I second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that is unanimous. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, the next application. Let's see. COA 0111-0201, 515 Washington Street. Okay. Okay, please state your name for the record. I only have to swear you in once, right? You're good?
You can, if you wanted to accept the first one, is it all of them? You can do that. Or you
Okay.
can do it each time, whichever.
Okay, let's accept for you. Let's accept all of them. And then I'd like to go ahead and swear in the applicant, if that's okay. Okay, could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Katrina Godwin, and I own the property at 515 Washington and live at 501.
Okay, great, thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great, thank you. Okay. All right, this is case COA 0111-2021 for 515 Washington Street. It is in the Glenwood, Brooklyn Historic District, a street side historic overlay. The request is to demolish the house and an outbuilding. This is a view of the property from Washington Street. This is another view from Washington, kind of at the end of the driveway or the curb cut. These items were not noted in the staff report, but there are, these are the yard features in between the right-of-way and the front of the house. So there are a series of 2 different stone steps. This is a view of the east facade. And this is kind of a view of the west facade due to the nature of the site. I did not go around to the back to take photographs of that. Staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions. And the applicant does have new information that I'll pass out. Great, thank you. All right, please proceed.
I'm only here to answer questions. I don't think I have anything to add that you don't have in the application. I had an engineer as advised to go over the property and, you know, deem that it was in the condition that was irreparable. And then the tree survey, the tree evaluation that staff had advised.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
I do, thank you. Questions about, I know you've seen the staff report, correct? And the conditions that they were recommending. The one I wanted to just ask what your thoughts were on was the documentation of the building, photograph, and if it were to be demolished.
Okay. The engineer had included, are you talking about the condition?
No, not to document the condition of it, but it's documenting, you know, a historic structure basically before it disappears, as sort of a record of the house.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand.
For posterity, for a historical record.
Okay. And so
It would be basically drawings of the house, photographs of the house.
oh, okay, okay.
You know, so just sort of detail on what was there.
Right.
Although I know from these pictures, there's a lot not there anymore.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
But I think the exterior is something that could be drawn and photographed to kind
Okay,
of
and
have
who
a
would do
record
that?
of-
Would I get someone to do that?
Yes,
Or what?
yeah,
Okay.
we don't provide that service. but-
Okay, got you.
Right. And also, my question was, and I was just curious if you had read that, if you'd be amenable to that. Sounds like that wasn't something you maybe comprehended, sort of what that was asking.
Right, no, I did not, I'm
Right.
sorry.
And also just questioning if there is any value in anything in there that could be salvaged prior to demo.
I don't think so. Truthfully, it's kind of knowing the condition and having owned the property beside it since 2004 and knowing the condition of the house before the last owner passed away. I haven't really walked further than just inside the doorway because it, to me, it's just inhabitable, and I feel like I'm gonna get something,
Right.
some disease, even, being in there for a short time. I do not think there's anything in there. I'm happy for, anyone to go in there and look.
Did you say you'd owned it since 2004?
The
Yeah.
building beside it,
Oh, okay.
You what?
The building beside it, she said.
the property beside the,
She's owned since 2000.
I think
She's
that
been in the building next
Janine
door
was
since
referring
2000.
to
Since the next door.
the building itself. Do you plan on salvaging any of the parts of the
I
house?
do not.
Have you contacted Habitat for Humanity or any other kind of charity to come by and review the property to find out if there are materials there that would be of value to them?
I have not, but I'd certainly be happy to.
Good.
I know this is beyond sort of the purpose of the commission here, but I would offer up that don't believe Habitat does that anymore, but they
Oh,
will
okay.
receive the items and they will, you'll get a third-party appraiser to give you a tax write-off for those
Okay.
donations. And especially with just, trying to be sustainable and thinking
Right.
through any valuable material that can be salvaged and possibly, repurposed would be a
Right.
really great thing.
Okay, yeah. I'd be
I think
happy
where
to-
we're coming from on this is that there's a great deal of energy still in that house, regardless of its condition, and to be as responsible and eco-understanding as possible to salvage as much of that energy as possible is a good thing to do.
Oh, yes. No, I agree. Totally agree.
And do you know the history of the house at all?
I do not, except for the last owner.
Okay.
So,
I do.
you do?
Would you mind sharing?
The first owner of the house was quite notable, actually. It was Clement Brimley, who was the brother of H.H. Brimley, who was, for all intents and purposes, the founder of the North Carolina Museum of Science.
Wow.
Mr. Brimley, Clement Brimley, the owner of the house for almost 30 years, was a pretty influential zoologist. He has a frog named after him, in fact. And he died in the home in 1946, I believe.
Wow. Wow.
That's impressive, Ian.
Are there photographs that you know of at Ian that exist that she may or may not know about?
I did not find any photographs of the house, no.
Okay.
So it's a real shame this is, it's in the condition that it is,
Yeah.
considering its history.
Yeah.
Ian, over here in the corner, can you explain how you might know that information? Like where you work,
Through
your
my own
credentials?
research.
All right. Any further questions for the applicant? Okay. Do you have any further questions for the commission?
Only if I have the photographs done or a drawing done, who would I submit that to?
We go to staff.
Okay, back to Colette. Okay. No, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. At this point, I will close the public hearing.
Anybody else to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anybody else here to speak for or in opposition of this application? Okay. All right, at this point, I will close the public hearing. John?
I got to tell you, I live in this neighborhood, and I understand the condition of this house, and I want to have a requiem for it. History like this is never going to be repeated or made up for in any way, and while I think, as I said before, there's a great deal of energy in that place, and to see it be put into a landfill completely is just sad. But given the condition of it and the particulars, and especially the reports from staff and the information that the owner has presented, I have to reluctantly agree that it's something that I will reluctantly support.
So my understanding is while we cannot stop a demolition, we can impose a 365-day delay.
That is correct.
And I think that's what we want to talk about.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I also want to note that although I see the Bartlett Tree report here, are we to assume, and we may need to open this back up to get the answer, that this is representing all the significant trees that are, being regulated, right? Because I think that's part of what staff is asking us to understand is what all the trees are there that are regulated and the fate of them with the demo of the house. And I'm seeing that there's 2 pecans noted and a hackberry. And I guess my question is, are those all the regulated trees on there,
And I
on the
think
site?
report or not, it's not a survey, it's not locating them.
Uh-huh.
It's not telling us really what we need to know in terms of that aspect of it.
Correct. The location is key in this situation since it is in Glenwood, Brooklyn, and not all of the trees on the site would be regulated
That's a very
anyway.
good point. Right.
Okay.
That's right.
Gotcha, so that's its front only. Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha.
I hate that this is coming down to, and we've certainly seen through Preservation North Carolina, houses in worse condition, salvaged and brought back. So I think having the opportunity to try and work with the owner and to find some alternatives to demolition would be an important thing. It kind of kills me that it's come to us in this way because it could have easily landed on our desk here as a demolition by neglect case.
Yeah.
One concern I have on the delay is if the intent of the delay, and I know the intent of the delay is to find an alternative, I would hope that we could get some minimal maintenance done on the property in short order so that it doesn't decay any further. Because, we have open windows, there's debris on the roof, which was documented in the photographs. It's not like the property's even seen basic maintenance from the evidence we've been shown. I guess, I don't know, there's something else rolling in my mind I need to formulate. But
Did we hear the last time the house has been occupied?
Don't believe so.
I know there were tax records, photos in the tax maps on iMaps that showed the house clearly occupied a couple of years ago,
Sure.
or at least maintained.
Yes. Did you want to? Yes. Do I need to? Let me reopen the public hearing.
Please.
Please. Okay, go ahead.
So Rodney Trexler, who was the owner of the house, and he died in January, I think it was January 12th of 2019, and was at his sister's in somewhere in North Carolina, who was a hospice nurse, and I think he was in hospice at this, so he was not at home when he died, but it was, that's when he died, so it's not been occupied since then.
Wow, okay. So for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
It is, I'm sorry, I do just, I know, I understand about the year-long thing. I do think it's a danger, as it is right now, and living there myself, seeing it, with the, just everything. And there's the people on the other side of it have a new baby who's a few months old. I'm sure they've been very nice about it, but I'm sure they're concerned.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you. I'll close the public hearing. Yes, I'll close the public hearing again.
Something else that I saw to me as an omission from the engineer's report is it talked about the foundation being bowed. But the photographs, you can clearly see it's pier and curtain wall construction. He didn't note that, and he didn't note whether what was bowing was the curtain wall or the actual piers. Walking around the property, it's kind of hard to tell what was going on exactly. But to me, that was kind of a pretty big omission from the report if you're going to say it's structurally unsound. He does note that it's, a typical construction for the 20s. Stud bearing walls and timber, masonry foundation walls. And it says supported by masonry foundation walls, which implies that the walls are weight bearing, which I'm pretty sure they're not if it's curtain wall and pier. So I don't want to say I discount his testimony, but I don't think it's as thorough as one would like.
I found it to be not as, like you said, not as thorough as I would have expected.
Yeah.
And it left me asking more questions. How extensive is the termite damage, for example?
Yeah, well, exactly. And I know just from Oakwood and other structures, there are a lot of houses from about that same
Please,
age.
I'm sorry, please remember to bring your mouth really, really
Sorry.
close. I've had an email that somebody's watching online
Okay.
that can't hear it.
My bad.
So, no, well, it's not just you.
Yep.
It's everybody.
So I know from my experience in Oakwood, a number of homes where there's been pretty extensive termite damage. And the nature of the construction of these houses from that period has been such that those main posts in the corners are not irrelevant to the structure of the house, but they're not critical to the structure of the house. And we've seen photographs and the photographic evidence of some of the main posts having the bad termite damage. So that's, inarguable from the evidence. But again, is it critical to the existence of the house? I'm not clear on that. So, all that said, all we can do is delay the demolition.
Right.
So,
Madam Chair, may I make just one point of clarification? And I've made this point previous
Yep.
previous occasions with the committee, but the statute the staff has put the UDO provisions, which are taken directly from the general statutes regarding demolition.
yes.
And I wouldn't suggest you care to read it because it's convoluted language. But the point I need to make is that the statute does not provide for a 365-day demolition delay. It is a demolition delay which may be directed up to 365,
Okay.
unless you affirmatively find that there is no historic value. Then the statute says it's 365 days there shall be no delay. But otherwise, in 365, you may find that to be just the appropriate period of time for this case.
Uh-huh.
But you do have discretion in any figure up to 365 days of
Okay.
delay.
And I think with information from Ian on the owner of the house, and I honestly did not read their listing document, and maybe we want to ask staff about that to determine what the survey said about the house itself.
Fact number 1.
Fact number 1. Thank you very much. So in the language of a survey, it certainly suggests that it is very much a contributing to the character of the district.
So I have a question maybe for staff or maybe just conversation, but when imposing a delay for a demolition, would that be sort of based on have we had a situation where we've based that delay on conditions that needed time, such as documenting the home, and that would be a condition we could apply here?
Yes, you have done that. There is a previous example where the maximum delay was imposed, but there was also a condition that you would come back in 6 months to evaluate the other conditions, documentation, consulting to find alternatives, salvage, and at that point reassess if the delay needed to continue, or if you felt satisfied that all best efforts had been attempted to, make sure that
Right.
the structure was recorded and salvaged.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I like that a lot.
I'll make
That's
a
fair to the applicant,
Yeah.
too.
Right, and one thing I'm noting, and I think we're speaking of it too in the structural report, is it says in the structural report that it was a limited sort of, I'm paraphrasing, cursory sort of just visual inspection. And I think what we can talk about is whether that's adequate or we need something to be more thorough
Yeah.
for that assessment.
Right. And I also think it gives the applicant some time to assess from a price point standard what it would take to bring this house back and add whatever addition needs to be taken versus the demolition cost and new construction. At least gives them the opportunity to investigate that aspect, and because I don't know that that's been done yet either. So I think it would just add to the list and reinforce what Colette is saying on that option.
I'll also add that if you do not feel like you have adequate information to make the decision, deferring and requesting specifically that certain things be provided to help you make that decision is also an option.
Well, and staff suggestion in the report here is that we defer the application until we get that tree survey in place. Now, I guess the question for us is that something that can happen in the 365 or whatever length delay period we impose, and as a condition, the difference is, well, one allows, frankly, one ensures that we actually get the tree protection plan in place, and the other puts it on a clock that will run out. I think it's very important to get the tree protection plan in terms of just what we do in protecting that, at least that element of the property.
I would agree.
So are we coming around to that, we go for the delay pending the receipt of the protection plan?
I am. I mean, I think the point here that what we're all agonizing over and what we're trying to get across here is, please make your decisions with very thoughtful information and research, and exhaust every possibility you can to do what you can to save what we have.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Okay. So are there any other comments or discussion from the commission?
I would like to see a more thorough investigation of the property. I don't know if that's possible, if we can add that as a condition. But I have a gut feeling that it's better than it looks.
I share your gut feeling, but
Yeah,
that's
me
hardly
too.
evidence.
Me too.
Right. Do we have a motion to defer?
I'd like to make a motion to defer.
And do we get the conditions into this motion?
Do we not yet, right?
Correct. If you are going to defer, then you will discuss conditions at the
After we've
Okay.
made the motion to defer.
Okay. So is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Okay. Any follow-up conditions?
That'll be when you make the decision, the final decision.
Well,
But the conditions for the deferral,
yeah.
do
for
we need
the
to
tree
actually vote on those, or do we
protection-
just?
No, just your suggestions. So I have noted that a tree survey with the locations shown and a more thorough structural assessment.
Okay,
Yes. Okay.
so the application's deferred.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. And we invite you to stay, but you can leave. Formal notification will be sent to the applicant in approximately 10 working days by staff. Thank
But
you
we'll
very much.
email
for
you
your-
tomorrow.
Oh, okay. That's not on here. Thank you so much. All right. Next case, COA 0113-2021, 814 Oberlin Road. Is there anyone present that would like to speak to this case? Okay. All right. Please state your names and addresses for the record.
I am Erin Morton at 716 Rosemont Avenue and staff to the RHDC.
Okay.
I'm Myrick Howard with Preservation North Carolina. My home address is 206 Woodburn Road.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great.
All right, this is case COA 113-2021 for 814 Oberlin Road. This is the Plummer T. Hall House Raleigh Historic Landmark, also located within the Oberlin Village Historic District. The request is to install front yard interpretive signage. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, good. This is a view of 814 Oberlin Road from across Oberlin Road. You can see we're at the intersection of Van Dyke and Oberlin. The Plummer T. Hall House is this one-story brown house to the left. Also on the property is the taller Fields Graves house, also a part of the PNC headquarters. This is just an image of the streetscape and front lawn of the same property. And moving across the street, this is a more pedestrian scale view. And looking down Oberlin from the opposite direction, looking north. And a view directly of the front walk at the Plummer T. Hall House. Staff suggestion is that we do not have a suggestion. If the committee chooses to approve the application, staff suggests that the committee approve with conditions. And Raz, before we turn this over, we had an email at 4:45 this afternoon that was a scanned affidavit from someone that's not able to attend the meeting. First of all, is that a valid way to submit an affidavit for the record?
As I have commented on before, you all are not bound by the strict rules of evidence. The committee members are not bound by the strict rules of evidence. An affidavit in itself is not automatically admissible. You have discretion. A scanned affidavit is several tiers lower, arguably, in terms of reliability, and that's the issue that determines whether you find it to be good and credible evidence or not. So I would say if you care to have it be seen by the committee members, if the chair rules that that's what they'd like to see, that's fine. But to be cautious with a scanned affidavit that comes in this manner.
I'll note that because it was submitted so close to the beginning of the meeting, we did not have time to print it. So the best that I could do is read it if you choose to hear it. The citizen noted that they had no issues with the proposed work, but had comments on other areas of the property.
So not necessarily relevant?
No.
Yeah, that sounds irrelevant. So we'll I'd say dismiss that for now. Thank
All
you.
right. That is the end of the staff presentation.
Okay.
Thank you. We thought we were simply going to do 2 interpretive signs about the remarkable families that have lived in these 2 houses. They're 6 square feet each, so not too much larger than this podium.
Madam Chair, may I interrupt? I know this is Mr. Myrick-Howard, who is Executive Director of
Preservation North Carolina.
PNC, and that wasn't noted for the record. And that's a little silly making this comment because I know Myrick has heard it before, but I know he has a law degree, but I don't know if his license is current. But typically when we have an individual appearing in these matters that are not attorneys in a QJ hearing, there's a bar rule that says it's practice of law. And the way we try to avoid a conflict with the bar rules is to ask if the witnesses will accept and acknowledge that they are appearing as a fact witness and are not appearing to make a case, make arguments, summarize evidence, question witnesses and that sort of thing, but are appearing to answer questions only as a fact witness in this case. If you'd acknowledge and accept that, I think we'd be fine, good to go.
I have not been a licensed attorney in decades.
I didn't think you were appearing in that capacity, but I just...
Nor have you played one on TV.
Well, that's debatable. Well, going back,
Excuse the interruption, sorry.
These signs are really quite, 2 signs, quite small. We have no freestanding sign saying Preservation North Carolina in the yard. The depth of the right-of-way plus utility easement is 17 feet back from the sidewalk. So we're proposing signs that will sit 18 to 20 feet back from the sidewalk, and the Graves house itself is only 23 feet from the sidewalk. So I don't know if could take the photo back, but we're talking about putting this sign will be quite a ways back from the sidewalk because we don't want to put it in the right of way and deal with the insurance issues and all that stuff. All right. We were a little surprised that the staff did not say, "Sure, great, this is wonderful." And there's a question about what we have proposed the cantilevered signs. We suggested that we would have plantings. We thought spirea, but quite frankly, we did this application quite a while back, and the spirea in the yard's not doing so great, so it may not be the choice. Maybe a Belia, something low dwarf. We want to try to keep it as close to the sidewalk as we can, so that people will actually come up the sidewalk and read it. What a radical thought! But we can't get it any closer than 18 to 20 feet away from the sidewalk. And I just kind of have to say, I mean, Ras was talking about some of the language in the enabling legislation. Shall we say, my hand's been on that enabling legislation a lot over the last 40 years. And it is screwball the way things have to get written. But this is one that, we just find it really hard to imagine that 2 small interpretive signs are in Congress with a special character of this landmark. And I'd be glad to try to answer any questions. I'm sort of curious now about the 445 affidavit, but I'll find about. I hope I can see that later, and y'all don't, right? Anyway, if there are questions, be glad to try to answer them.
I don't have any questions.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that you were amenable to some plantings because I see that in the text, but I didn't see that in any of your visuals. So,
well, the thing from a visual standpoint, if we put the plantings in, you wouldn't see the sign.
Not going to understand the sign, exactly, right.
So damned if you do,
One or the
damned if
other.
you don't on that one.
Right.
I just had one question. As far as the Graves Fields interpretive sign, I noticed both of them are kind of off of the walk for the Plummer Tea House. Did you consider separating them or having that one be closer to?
To be real honest, we really don't want to separate them because and it might be helpful if we can kind of pull up the Graves house. I don't know if I can do it from here, just if I go backwards on this thing, is that? There you go. Okay. You see those two big, right in front of where the security sign is, and right there are two big winter jasmine that are original to the house. We took care to they're probably 50, 60 years old. We replanted them. It will be in line with those. Between those two plants is a step up. And we really don't want to put people at jeopardy of having a sign right where there's a step in the sidewalk. And quite frankly, what we thought is if you put them across the sidewalk from each other, the one for the Graves house, you'll be looking at the Graves house. And then the other one, and it'll kind of give a chance for people to just kind of comfortably read the two signs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will suggest, though, Myrick, that it does emphasize the entrance to the one house over the other, and you're probably going to have folks knocking on that door more often than not. But
Well,
that's just a sociology note I was going to make. That's all.
Well, to be real honest, when we got into doing these two houses, our intention was to treat the landscapes differently so it didn't read as one commercial project, so to speak. The fields and the graves historically were way more plant people than Reverend Hall.
Ah.
So we left Reverend Hall's front yard pretty, let's see, go back over here, pretty bare. And all that plant growth you see around the base is just coleus that have gone wild.
Gotcha.
And it's gone as of today. We got down before it reseeded.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this case before I close the public hearing? Okay. All right. At this time, I'll close the public hearing. Thank you. All right. Any internal discussion?
I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's a no-brainer here.
Yeah.
One thing I do note is that the cited 1.8.9 uses the language to consider screening the base. It doesn't say to screen the base, so that guideline-wise makes it quite optional.
Do you want to try for a motion, Curtis?
Am I your motion maker?
Oh, we can go to somebody else.
I can do it. This one's
John?
simple. Yeah.
Let's change it up. John, why don't you try for a motion?
Based on the information contained in this application and the staff's evaluation in this evidential hearing, installing two interpretive signs is not incongruous in concept according to guideline sections 1.3.2.9, 1.8.2.5, and 0.7. However, installing freestanding signs in front of the yard are also not incongruous according to guideline sections 1.8.9 and following suggested facts. Am I right about that?
Can I make a suggestion?
Please do.
How about where you're listing the sections, say starting 1.8.2, 0.5, 0.7, 0.9, and leave it there.
Okay, done.
Okay?
With the following suggested facts 1 through 7.
And I'd like to suggest an eighth fact that makes it clear that the proposed sign is an interpretive sign, just to differentiate it from any other kind of signage that might go on a property, so that this decision is specific to the situation of putting an interpretive sign somewhere and can't be used to justify, I don't know, some other weird sign, like a institutional sign in a similar location.
Okay.
Curtis, that is included in the work description as well as
Okay, so it's already clearly there.
Section A. It's not.
I will retract that.
Okay, I can stop there for this first part, I believe.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that is unanimous. follow-up?
I move that the committee choose to approve, that we approve this application based on the following suggested conditions, 1 through 3.
Is there a second?
I'd like to suggest an amendment,
Yes.
that we don't have suggested conditions, that they are the following conditions, 1 through 3.
Following conditions 1 through 3. Thank you for your precision.
Sure. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Your case has been approved, and you're welcome to stay if you'd like.
Good cheer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so our next case is COA 0114-2021, 605 North Bloodworth Street. Is there anyone here representing the applicant? Thank you all. All right. Get everybody sworn on. Very good. Okay, could you state your... Oh.
I was just letting them know to state their names.
Oh, sure. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is John Seibert. I live at 206 East Franklin Street.
Lena Seibert, 206 East Franklin Street.
Great. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, this is case 114-2021 for 605 North Bloodworth Street in the Oakwood Historic District. The work request is to remove an accessory building, construct a new 2-car garage, construct patio walls and gates, alter driveway, and construct a retaining wall. This is a view of the front of 605 North Bloodworth Street. This is a corner lot, so we'll be moving around the side of the property through this series of photographs. This is the area of proposed work. You can see the existing accessory structure and walled-in patio. And another view from across Pace Street, the existing accessory structure and private alleyway to the right. And a somewhat less visible view from Pace Street. And this is the accessory structure currently. And the private alley. So the staff suggestion is that the committee discuss the massing and scale of the proposed garage with regards to the subject property and to well-related nearby buildings, and defer to allow for revisions based on the discussion. Should the committee choose to render a decision, staff suggests that the committee approve with conditions.
So our client would like to obviously add a 2-car garage and have an office above this space to be utilized. The existing narrow garage obviously is no longer being used in that manner, as it's got steps up to it. So it's not very easy up to drive up into it. I think the project is fairly self-explanatory. We did reduce the massing from what we had originally proposed at the DRAC meeting. We brought the roof lines down. We have shrunk the footprint to sort of a minimal amount of size to be able to accommodate the vehicles necessary, and then to provide adequate office space above. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Hi, John.
Hey, how are you?
You wrote in the application here, in the project description, that the staff believe the current storage building labeled garage, which is the one that we're discussing to be demolished, is not historically significant.
Yes, that was subsequently changed from the point when we wrote that.
Okay.
Then they came back to us later on and said, we we discovered that it was.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clear up. That's what I wanted to understand better.
But initially, we were told it was not.
And then you also wrote in here, point number 5, that if it was, you used the guideline 1.5 to build your case, but that talks about if it is in such deterioration or structurally unsound. This building is not.
It has not really been assessed for that from that perspective.
Okay. Okay, so
It is no longer being utilized of what it was initially intended to be used
right,
for.
but from the guideline 1.5, this doesn't apply, or doesn't support your case, because it's not an accessory building that's deteriorated or structurally unsound.
I did not assess it whether it was structurally unsound.
Okay.
I'd have to get inside of it.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
I have some for staff.
Okay.
I'm not seeing evidence here of other 2-car garages in the historic district.
Yeah, so the exact, there's 2 properties on this block.
Okay.
2 major houses on this block. And one, the neighboring property had a 2-car approved on its property with an office above, and is actually much larger than the one we are actually proposing.
And they're both serviced off of the alleyway, I gather?
Correct.
Okay.
Staff, could you confirm that? You confirm that?
Yes, the house next door is shared off the same private alley. There is an accessory building for that accommodates a 2-car garage.
And that's fact 20, I see. In your report, it's fact 20.
And an office
That's
above.
correct.
And I thought we had that as evidence. Am I imagining that? I know that well, so maybe I just know what it looks like, but
Yeah, I
did
think
we not
it's
have evidence of that?
Fact number 20.
Fact 20 calls it. And then something I was curious about was fact 17, where it's showing that the original built area was 3,355 square feet, and the proposed property will have a built area of 7,988 square feet. Are we sure that's right?
I checked that as best I could. The existing and proposed site plans were not to scale.
Right.
But based off of the square footages provided by the applicant and looking through our physical file for previous additions approved and other alterations, that appears to be relatively correct.
So there were a series of alterations that made up most of that additional 3,500 square feet, because the garage certainly isn't that big. Yeah.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah,
I
okay.
found an addition approved in 2007 and another in 2015.
Gotcha. Okay. So that sounds credible.
Okay. Is there anyone present that has any other testimony to offer for or against this case before I close the public hearing? Okay. All right. Any other questions from the commissioners for the applicant? Okay. At this point, I'll close the public hearing. Thank you. All right. Any comments?
Well, my primary concern about the application is just the sort of mass and scale of the new accessory building on Pace Street there, because the rest of Pace Street is essentially one-story buildings with dormers at most. Now, the garage is one-story building with dormer, but it's tight up against Pay Street, which is a very different physical condition.
Well, and where I come from is, I think when I realized that this accessory building is a contributing historical piece, I stopped there, especially because it is structurally, from what I can understand, there's no evidence that says it's not structurally unsound, and that there is no deterioration presented in the evidence in any way. I basically kind of put down my pencil at that stage.
So in that scenario, though, our choice would be to delay that demolition for 365 days or less, not stop it, right? So,
yeah, I mean, that's...
So documenting it and everything else would be what we could require.
Janine, did you have a comment?
I was going to make a comment. Unlike a previous case, this one sort of is twofold. It's about the demo.
Right.
And then it's about the proposed new structure.
Right.
And I'm just making that distinction so we kind of think about both of those parts to it.
Yeah, and where I stop is at the demo. Because I think that once that year has passed, then we could discuss what the new application is going to be, unless we have to consider these both as a package.
And I actually prefer the idea of considering them as a package, because it somewhat ensures that we don't end up with a streetscape with a missing piece. You know, the idea of approving a demo of a structure, not knowing what's going up in its place, is, I find, more problematic than approving the sequence so that actually just it happens rather quickly. And I think that's, both are valid points of view, and neither necessarily gets us anywhere else.
I understand. I will accept that.
Okay.
Okay. Ian, did you have any comments? Otherwise, I'm going
I
to
just wanted to
open.
reiterate that point, which is essentially
Just a
we
second.
can
I
get
haven't reopened the public hearing yet. Give me 1 second. Ian, did you have any comment you wanted to make before I reopen the public hearing?
Nothing that hasn't already been said.
Okay, great. Okay, now I'll reopen the public hearing. Feel free to speak now.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to reiterate the point that,
Sure.
this can be delayed if you wanted to, but I would also encourage that we would get approval so that we, have a plan going forward. So, yeah, it would be nice to wait, but, it would be nice to move forward now, but we can wait, but at least have clarity about what we will do.
Thank you. All right. Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing again.
Well, now I can bring up my issues with the scale. In looking at the roof lines and I can appreciate that you want to pack in as much square footage in this little guy as possible, but it does begin to challenge, or at least have some a lot more dominance with the existing house than if it were a one-story structure or a lower roofed structure. And I think that whatever goes there is perceived as and understood as an accessory structure, right. That it is not perceived as another house or another main structure. And so, and right now, from what I can perceive from the drawings, there is a challenge there, and it's almost on the borderline of which it is, whether it's perceived accessory or it's perceived as a main structure.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I think there's also a built pattern question here. With this, I don't necessarily take exception to the scale of the structure out of context of where it is on the lot, but the fact that it is right on the street line.
Correct.
I haven't heard any evidence to suggest there's any other precedent for that in Oakwood, or that is not an atypical condition.
Well, but I also see it in the tight relationship to the existing house.
Right.
Because I think it's between this is a very large building to kind of stuff between the street and the house.
Yeah, and that with the other property, with the garage set so far back, there is that tight relationship, but it's not so tight to the street.
Correct.
Right, so it's not
Correct.
perceived that way.
Correct.
I'm trying to think of other precedents in Oakwood that would help me sleep better at night.
Yeah.
And I'm not thinking of any.
We'll reopen the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so just wanted to, there's a drawing in there essentially showing the relationship of the house.
Yes.
And the slope is such that it's actually sloping away from the house down to Pay Street.
Yep.
Right.
And so the house is more or the garage structure is more diminutive than I think you realize by virtue of that slope. And it steps down from the house and it steps back.
Well, but I'm looking at your elevations, from the shared driveway and the north elevation, and I think they're fairly accurate in terms of the proximity of the garage apartment to the house, as well as the height of that garage apartment to the house. And whether it slopes down or not, it's a big structure.
Yeah. I mean, I think the elevation that's presented to the street is kind of what we're keep
Exactly.
pushing back on.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see and appreciate much has been done with the design to help diminish the scale of it.
Agreed.
With the dormer, with the, I don't know what it's called, the board that's running basically along sort of ceiling height, just to establish that it's not so high. I think all of these are excellent moves.
We use the wall, so I mean, effectively, it is a one-story structure, and we're just capturing the attic with some dormers. Because we use the spring line of the walls, the top of the garage walls as
I'm sorry, John, can you repeat that again?
So I was just saying is, we use the spring line of the garage walls
Yes.
to create the roof, and then we just created the space upstairs with
Correct.
dormers. Now, we could put a water table across that if that would help give more diminutive sense to the building.
I think honestly, it's the depth of the building that's what I keep coming back to relative to the street and the
Agreed.
accessory structure hard up on the street.
The property immediately behind it
Uh-huh.
also has a structure immediately on the street like this.
I wish there was evidence.
So if you could, let me go back in the photographs.
Yeah, let's see if we can't.
Can I use these arrows?
I don't recall that.
Okay,
Let's
well,
see.
unfortunately, you can't quite see it other than right here.
Yeah, again, it's,
That is an example, essentially a one-story, much larger structure, garage structure than this existing, and it is right on Pay Street. I don't know if there's another picture here. You can see it up behind that.
yeah.
Well, that's probably, you can kind of see it in that photograph right there.
We have that picture in our application on page 002, if anybody has their application.
I think we provided a photograph of that as well.
Right.
There should also be a sort of streetscape establishing the heights of those two buildings next to each other across the driveway.
It is uphill from us, too. So we're effectively similarly sized to what's exactly next to us. And it is right on Pay Street.
Is this this is not 305 Pay Street, the photograph that you show here?
There's a, no.
Which sheet is that? I'm sorry.
Number 8.
That's actually across the street. There's another structure.
Actually, in the application, I think it's sheet 9.
Okay.
There, I think it's misidentified.
Oh, yes, you can see it there. That's
Oh, yeah, there it is, right.
there it is. And you can see it's right where ours would be, effectively, relationally to Pace Street.
Yep. That helps.
And it is also a garage.
John, is there any ability to just bring the height down?
I mean, if you look at the section, hold on a second. Let me,
I mean, because I look at across the street at 305 Pace, and that's a much more, there's obviously a
yes,
second
we could
floor
bring
there.
the floor down a bit. I think right now, my eyes are failing me. But, it's really a 10-foot ceiling in the garage, but we could lower it to. I hate to go much lower than that, but we could.
I think the question, rather than negotiating design at this point, is what's in front of us approvable?
Yeah.
Right? And
Well, I think it just illustrates my point that I've got a concern with the scale.
right.
I hear you, and I'm willing to, and as staff.
And because I'm with Curtis, I don't want to get into your business.
Sure.
But I do have those issues about the scale simply because of its proximity to the street and proximity to the house. Those are paramount for me.
And as staff has suggested, we're open to seeing what else we can do to kind of help make it a little bit more perceptually diminutive.
Are there any further questions for the applicant?
You said that this building right here on the building further west on Pace Street,
Yes.
you said that this was bigger than the proposed garage?
Well, it's a different. It's actually a little bit. I don't have the exact dimensions with me, but it's a little bit narrower, but it's much deeper.
Okay, so you said it was deeper. You mean deeper
Into the lot.
into the lot? Did you measure that, or you can just do it by eye, or?
I don't know. We didn't have. It actually has a gate on it. You can't get onto the property.
That would be a helpful fact to cite.
They have an electronic gate, which basically opens when a car approaches it.
Ian, was your question about the other garage down that private alley? That structure?
No, the one further west on Pace Street.
Okay, that one. All right.
There is a picture of the neighbor's structure as well.
If you mean the one on the alley, yeah, that's in
If
the.
you go to page 7 of our application, photograph number 2, you can see it is much larger. Do you find that?
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. I'll close the public hearing again and turn to internal discussion.
Just as a point to start the discussion or at least move things along, I am of the inclination to follow through with staff suggestions, specifically 8 and 9, discussing that the dormers of the new garage be reduced in size and not be an extension of the walls below, and that the height of the garage be reduced to no taller than the eave of the historic home. Specifically those two, in addition to the rest that they have outlined here.
Any other discussion? Janine?
Maybe a question for staff. I know we're always talking about salvaging and thinking through when these are demolition applications, but we can't require salvaging materials or documentation of a structure. That can only be a request to consider. Is that correct? A suggestion, if you will.
Tanya's nodding yes.
Okay, thank you.
But if they do follow through with some sort of documentation or salvaging materials, we can lift the delay.
That is definitely something you can consider to shorten the delay if you choose to impose a delay.
Oh, interesting. I see. Right, almost optional conditions that would speed up that, right?
A little carrot.
Well, I will echo the sentiments that this feels like a larger than atypical sized garage in that location as well. And I'm encouraged that the applicants are offering to re-examine that.
What I like about what staff suggests in this is that it's specific elements that they're dealing with, which I find to be more precise than just bringing the scale down.
So, Janine, would you like to make a motion?
All right. Well, actually, let me think about it. All right, I'm going to try, but I move that based on the evidence that's been presented in this application and staff evaluation and during this evidentiary hearing, that the committee finds that the demolishing the accessory building and constructing a new garage is not incongruous in concept according to guidelines sections 1.3.6 through 8, 1.6.6, 7, 8, 4.2.4.5, and 6. However, demolishing a historic structure is incongruous according to guidelines sections 1.3.1, 1.6.1, 4.2.4, and the size and scale of the proposed garage is incongruous according to guidelines section 1.6.11. And the following suggested facts. 1 through 6. Oh, sorry.
That's all part of one section.
Yeah, 1 through 30. Okay. And altering the existing driveway, constructing patio walls and gates, and constructing a retaining wall is not incongruous in concept according to guidelines section 1.3.1, 0.2.7, 8, 9, 1.4.1, 0.2.8, 1.5.1, 0.2, 1.5.5, 0.6.7, 1.5.9, and the following suggested facts. 1.
We just make that facts and not suggested facts, because these are your,
I'm sorry,
your
and the
findings
following
of
facts.
facts, and
Thank
the staff
you.
suggests the facts.
Yes. And the following facts, 1 through 8.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Can we have a discussion
Yes,
first?
sorry, discussion. Yes, absolutely.
I think it's a great motion, but I don't know how we can approve a delay in application where one of our findings of fact is that something is incongruous. That tells us that if it's incongruous, the logical conclusion is that we're denying the construction of the garage, right?
Well,
Or
aren't we
can
then
we-
saying the condition is that it is going to be revisited to a scale that we do find congruous? Or did I?
I mean, yeah.
revisit how I say that.
I guess that, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't.
I don't know if I have comfort with this conceptually, and this is why I want to talk about it. Because I think that judgment, since this is such a strange situation, a strange characteristic,
Would you be
maybe
happy?
we should look to defer the application or approve the.
With those conditions is what
Yeah.
the staff is recommending, you're saying?
I was going to suggest that in the amend it to say the size and scale of the proposed garage as presented is incongruous to guidelines.
Okay.
Sections 1.611 with the following facts. And then in the second motion, we render a decision based on approval with the following conditions, which means that they have to come back and
I think we might be talking about a deferral instead of
We are.
okay.
an
I think we are.
approval, just because it's, with the conditions, it does state that should we approve the application, which I don't think we are doing right now.
Right.
And the deferral suggests that they have an opportunity to make revisions based on our discussion.
Okay.
And then come back.
I like that.
I
And,
think that sounds right.
and then when we come back round to it, in our conditions, I think we should add that condition that will allow us to come back and waive the delay. That way, we won't be slowing them down necessarily from
Right.
our target.
Okay.
So that's solving the problem and being nice at the same time.
I agree.
Okay. All right, so do we need to
make a formal motion to
for a
defer?
motion to defer?
Okay, I move that we defer this proposal.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And that is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. Have a great evening. Okay. Our next case is COA 0115-2021 2214 Van Dyke Avenue.
Okay. On this case, while I was on DRAC, we reviewed previous designs for this. I heard those. Now, this is a new design. This is a different architect. And I don't feel I can be biased, but I am coming to the case with more information than would be typical. So I'm looking to my colleagues to tell me whether or not I should recuse myself, because
You've not seen this design now.
I was in the conversations leading up to this design, but I have not seen this design.
Okay. I have no issue.
I'm fine.
I'm fine.
I think if you ask the parties present, the applicant as well as others that might be intending to speak, if they have any objection to Mr. Castings sitting on the case.
Any objections?
We have no objections.
Okay, great.
Okay.
We're new to the party.
Cool.
Okay, great. So for the record, could you state your name and your address?
Sure. John Zellweger with Provision Studio. I live at 603 Holden Street, and I represent our owners at 2214 for the case.
Great, thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great, thank you.
All right, this is case COA 0115-2021 for 2214 Van Dyke Avenue. It is in the Oberlin Village Historic District, which is a general historic overlay district. The nature of the request is to alter a non-historic garage and prune trees. This is a view of the property from Van Dyke. This is just off of the previous shot from the intersection of Parker and Van Dyke, and you can see the existing garage in question at the back of the property here. And this is a slightly closer view of that same angle. This is the existing garage as seen from Parker Street. And this is another view from Parker Street. Where this photo was taken is actually outside of the historic district. So this is looking, the line of the historic district is at the end of the parcel. And staff's suggestion is to discuss the use of a primarily glass dormer on the front facade.
Ready for me?
Mr. Zellweger, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you may have heard me before make the same series of comments. We have a state bar rule that addresses quasi-judicial hearings and appearing in a representative capacity. And since you are not the individual owner of the property, we just ask that you accept and acknowledge for the record that you're a fact witness only, that you will not be representing the applicant here in the sense an attorney would represent a party. In a court of law, you'll not be cross-examining witnesses, making arguments, summarizing the case, and so forth. But here to answer questions and testify as to facts only.
Correct. Yes, I accept that. Thank
you.
you. I don't think I actually have much to say. It's getting late. You have everything in your package. I think that things were, hopefully we made it clear enough with our statements. We have read the staff report. We think the conditions that have been recommended to you are reasonable. You all are familiar with the design process where those types of decisions generally get made a little further down the road, especially with a commitment like this. We want to have that in place before we take further steps with working with a builder on coming up with costing and choosing the exact window and exact door and finalizing details like handrails. So we are very comfortable continuing to work with staff on all of that. Other than that, I'm here to answer questions. I defer to you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in our audience that is here to speak for or against this application? Okay. Any questions for the applicant from the commission?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about staff in their comments had suggested that potentially the dormer facing the street being composed of casement windows and then the 3 large glass panels may be incongruous. Do you want to talk to that?
Sure.
To that?
I think what we have strived to accomplish with this proposal is balance a respectful massing and materiality that relates not only to the property but the district, but at the same time also reinforce the understanding that this is something of its era and not from another era, and not confuse those who are reading the fabric of the Oberlin Village overlay. So it's our thought, with having worked with the owners about what they wanted to achieve with the space above the garage, the view to the adjacent parcels, to the park across the street, having light penetrate deeply into that space upstairs so that we are being respectful of energy management. These are all factors in how we came to the conclusion that we could articulate that dormer simply by using as much glass as possible. There is an operable window there as well for fresh air, for ventilation, for egress, things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. All right. Now I'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Turn to internal discussion. John, did you have any?
I think where I come down is that this one elevation is, I hate to say it, inconsistent with the rest of the design. Simply from a window proportion standpoint. And while I completely support as much light in a building as possible, window sizes don't necessarily determine how much light gets in through an aperture. And I'm just coming from a consistency standpoint from the rest of the elevations. That's all.
And to that to that end, staff points us to 1.6.8. Select windows and doors for new garages and accessory buildings that are compatible in material, subdivision, proportion, pattern, and detail with the windows and doors of the principal structure or other historic garages in accessory buildings in the district. Haven't heard anything about trapezoidal or triangular windows. So the only element to this design I take exception to, perhaps based on incongruity, are those three pieces of glazing.
Right.
Even the size and proportion of the casement, I don't see as incongruous.
No, I have no other issues with the design other than just what you're saying, Curtis, and the consistency of just it being a complete whole. I think if it had taken the broader step of that being all the way around, then we could have a different discussion about it. It's just that this one element is out of character with the rest of the building, as well as out of character with the neighborhood in terms of the proportional issues.
I see a lot of thinking happening
Yeah.
over there.
I agree
Do
with
tell.
both of you, but I do like the fact that it does differentiate itself from the rest of the historic houses in the neighborhood.
I agree with that too.
I'm thinking over what you said, John, because I'm not quite in agreement that, it's the schizophrenia that's the issue. For example, if sort of that approach were repeated in a way that was very incongruous with other fenestration, I don't know that would be, I don't know. I'm sort of struggling with that kind of suggestion that it's that one articulation, but
I think where I'm coming from on it is it's a mixed concept where there is a neighborhood character on all four sides, and it makes me question why this one side gets a different message.
And to me, that inconsistency isn't necessarily so much of an issue, but the precedent-setting nature of the triangular windows.
Yeah.
That's really where I'm most concerned.
Right. I think it is. I don't disagree with anomaly. I think that where I'm coming down from is that it is it is in itself, by itself, and not in context.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would like to respond when it's when you're ready.
Okay. Any other comments? I think I would just add this, kind of piggybacking off of the conversation you all are having. While I appreciate that the applicant has expressed that this is potentially a contemporary insertion, as not to muddy history or the history of the building and the aesthetic of the area, I do believe it kind of does just that, just because and I think I'm getting to what you're saying, but because of the way that it's sort of rendered and designed, it muddies those lines. So you do have those trapezoidal windows, but everything else about its articulation is consistent with the current history and texture.
And
even the way the roof kind of comes over top.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And I think that while I completely agree with differentiating new and of this time work, the piece that there are ways to make that happen within the language that has already begun without jumping on another ship to make it happen.
Well, and I would go a little further with that. If you drive the district, the fact that it's a garage in that
Yeah.
district is a differentiation.
Correct. Yeah. It's already there. The
Yeah.
very fact that there's a garage in this district is a differentiating fact.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to be differentiated anymore, but again, it goes to I'm going back to the language of how the differentiations are can be made versus how this one is being articulated.
I would also argue that, in the evidence presented here, this dormer is kind of always associated with the primary structure and primary entry. And so, this is being introduced on a sort of secondary accessory structure. So I guess I would say as you come to provide comment, that was something that I flagged, but it's sounding like, we're kind of letting that one go. So anyway, at this point, I will reopen the public hearing.
Thank you. I think I want to start with a question, though. Is this coming down to the non-rectangular window patterns, those actual lights in that overall dormer?
Yes.
Yes.
Nothing other than
Nothing other than that.
The
That's it.
triangular
That's the
glass
only thing.
pieces.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
That's it.
The driving force behind that was the northern orientation and the view to the park.
Sure.
We understand that that is definitely different. We felt that given its location on the boundary, the fact that it had no adjacent contributing structures, and that there is no other precedent in the neighborhood, that this could be a possibility in order to, again, pull as much light in from the northern side. That didn't make sense, nor did the roof configuration accommodate. A view across to the neighbor's yard on the rear was something that we consciously avoided.
Yes.
View to the neighbor on the west was also consciously avoided. So there were these intentions, and what that was leaving us with was how can we maximize the light penetration, and we were left with the facade facing the street, which historically, not just necessarily in this district, but typically front facades are a little bit more ornamented. This is a secondary structure. We acknowledge that as well. And so I think we want to calibrate that. And what I'd love to do is, if deferral is necessary in order to accommodate this, that's fine. But if we could work through staff on finding some better balance that works for the RHDC and works for our owner, we're willing to accept that.
Great.
And if I can throw out there, nothing would preclude you from proposing, for instance, skylights that are facing north. And just, if you were eliminating the triangular windows in the dormer.
I appreciate that suggestion. We should definitely take that back to the owner.
And there's also procedurally, just hearing the way things are going, nothing to stop you from amending the application on the fly if you have that latitude, and getting it approved today.
Okay.
I.e., well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to do that either.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to
I
do
was going
that.
to say, do I have to get out my sketchbook and?
No. I keep wanting to give you clues.
Yeah. So here we are.
Just one point of detail before we move off of this. We've been talking about the north side of the building. Am I correct that the front of the garage, the street-facing side of the garage, is the west
The
side?
west elevation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right, and that's correct. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Well,
That's a misstatement on my part.
So
Now I'm confused.
The,
It changes everything.
well, you're not getting northern light through it. That's
You're
what
getting,
that-
you're getting west light. You're getting west light. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess what we're kind of floating down to is dealer's choice here. We could, I think, vote on it and with a potential denial vote, or we could vote to defer it and or just sort of roll the dice.
Or unless we hear a suggestion from the applicant that resolves the question.
Yeah, an amendment.
An
Yeah.
amendment.
Well, is it as simple as saying that the triangular lights will no longer be glass and simply be like the shingles that are adjacent?
That would be a usable amendment.
I
We can
like
use
that.
I would like the flexibility to
And then
refine the proportions and the divisions between
Details
that
to be
make it-
worked out with staff.
Yeah.
Right, but yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think that is something that we can.
I think the bottom
Talk with our
line
own
here
on.
is to be consistent with the vertical window proportion that you have used throughout the rest
Sure.
of the design.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
I think that's basically what that was the answer we were looking for.
Question, if this, I've never sort of, I feel like this is a new process, what we're kind of pulling together here, but, and I'm thinking about the validity of skylights. Is that something, if he were to want that goes through staff again? Or like, what is the metric by which we don't see this? I mean,
Well, skylights, if I remember correctly, are a staff approvable item on their own.
if they're seen from the street there?
I don't think we'd
Asking.
put them on the street personally. We'd review that obviously, but I think it would be more inclined to put it
Well,
on the
I
lower
suggest
slope
that
roof on the rear.
we stick with what we've got in
Yeah.
front of us,
Okay.
and that the comments that we are making are based on the vertical window proportion, and we leave it at that.
Right, and if it
that-
becomes a
that-
bigger modification,
then
that- so
staff
be it, right.
staff can
We
evaluate.
just ask for the option or the
Correct.
ability to massage the proportions
Correct.
accordingly, but in light of the change of material, it may, what you have on paper, it's not just going to go from a piece of glass to fiber cement board.
And staff will look at that.
Correct. It'll be at the staff level. Yeah.
Is staff comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we're hearing, just to repeat back, an amendment that replaces the triangular windows with the fiber cement shake pattern as drawn on the other elevations. And we will, already proposed conditions that any revisions could be presented to and approved by staff.
Correct.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so what edits do we have here?
I think if you've got a condition in the decision document, in the findings, that could cover it.
I do think
Says he
that.
accepts that.
Okay.
Can we not
All right.
just make this
Okay,
simple
that's great.
and just say that the glass
Okay, so
panels are
now we'll close the
incongruous?
public hearing. And
Not
I
there anymore
think
in the application.
we are ready for a motion. Yes? Okay.
Okay, let me just do a little editing.
Okay.
There we go, right there. We just take out number 6.
I think so. Okay, I can give it a shot if you guys want me to.
Knock yourself out.
I move that based on the evidence that's been presented in the application and during the evidentiary hearing, the committee finds that the proposed altering of a non-historic garage is not incongruous in concept according to guidelines sections 1.3.1, 0.7, 0.8, 0.12, 1.6.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.10, 0.11, 0.12, citing facts 1 through 5 and 7 through 12.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay. A follow-up? Or
a
can we
vote?
do it?
I
I'm
second.
sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and that's unanimous. All right, follow-up.
Okay, I move that the certificate of appropriateness be approved with the following conditions. The applicant receive prior to commencement of work all other required permits or permissions from the governmental agencies. 2, revisions or deviations from any portion of the as-submitted work shall be submitted to staff prior to installation or construction for review and approval. 3, the tree protection plan be implemented and remain in place for the duration of construction. 4, that prior to issuance of the blue card placard, the following be provided and approved to by staff. A, window selection details and specifications. 5, that prior to the installation or construction of the following be provided to and approved by staff. A, door section specifications, railing section and construction details. C, paint color if changing. And that's it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's unanimous. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
Your application has been approved. Okay. All right. Next we have COA 01162021 214 Elm Street.
I don't think anyone's here for that application.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about this one real quick, or is it?
Yes, you
Tanya's
can.
saying not yet.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, with the applicant not present, do you want to hear the case or do you want to defer because the applicant is not present?
We can't proceed with could we proceed with the case with no applicant?
You
Yeah.
could.
I see no reason not to proceed with it, given the details and the way things are leaning.
Well, here was my question. Why is this an evidentiary hearing?
It is an after the fact demolition of
After the fact demolition.
Right.
Correct. And the original dimensions of the structure are larger than the type of accessory structure that staff can review and approve.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think we've ever rendered a decision in absence of the applicant.
Well, I can tell you historically the commission has. Okay. Quite often, if they choose not to show up, that's their problem, you know?
Okay. Okay. Well, what do you all think?
I wouldn't be opposed to proceeding if
I have no
others
problem.
are not.
I'm not opposed.
Okay.
It
Let's
seems
proceed.
pretty straightforward to
Yeah,
me.
it's very straightforward.
And
Okay.
I don't
Alright.
think there's any legal problem with that, and
Okay.
particularly in light of the fact that the application is recommended for approval, and it seems to be that's the way you're all headed.
Okay.
Okay, so this is case COA 0116-2021 for 214 Elm Street. It is in the Oakwood Historic District, which is a general historic overlay district. And this is, as I mentioned, an after-the-fact application for the demolition of a shed. This is a view of the main house from Elm Street. And if you look down the driveway here, the previous location of the shed was at the end of the driveway. And I have a closer view from the rear yard. This is the former shed location. All that remains are these concrete foundation blocks. And staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions.
Thank you. All right. I guess at this point, we'll close the public hearing.
Oh. Ask for if there's anybody here to.
Is there anyone here to speak for or against this application? No. Okay. At this point, we'll close the public hearing and turn to internal discussion.
I've got a question. What action do we take if we said no? That
Be forced to rebuild it.
really?
Or, yeah, well, no, we could delay it, and then nothing would happen, I guess. They couldn't be forced to rebuild it. You're right.
So I'm okay.
We don't have a lot of impact is what
Yeah.
Yeah.
that
Okay.
we're saying here. but-
It just seems so perfunctory that I guess I was questioning why we were even hearing the case, but now I understand because of the square footage. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay.
And
I'd like to make a motion.
do it.
Thank you. Based on the information contained in the application, the staff's evaluation in this evidentiary hearing, demolishing a shed is not incongruous in concept according to guidelines 1.3.1, 1.6.5, and the following suggested facts 1 through 6.
Second.
Following facts. Oh, sorry.
Any
Following-
discussion?
Yeah, not suggested facts.
Not suggested facts, facts. Yeah, absolute facts.
Right. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's unanimous. Okay. Any follow-up?
I move that the committee approve the application with the following conditions 1 through 3.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And that is unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And now we have COA 101182021. 513 West Jones Street. Is there anyone here to speak for that? Okay, could you each state your names and addresses for the record?
Yes, Jennifer Ashton, 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 302.
Chris Bailey, 917 Culpeper Lane.
And Greg Sandroder, 104 Lake Cliff Court in Cary.
Great, thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
All right, our last and final. This is COA 0118-2021 for 513 West Jones Street. This is a Raleigh historic landmark, the former Raleigh Electric Company powerhouse. And the request is to alter a non-historic parking deck. This parcel is very large, so I have a lot of photos to walk you through here. This is a view of the property, the historic property, from West Jones Street. And this is a little further on West Jones, closer to the railroad tracks. You can see the existing parking deck here to the back of the structure. And this is from the sidewalk. And again, you can see a little clearer picture of the existing parking deck. This is a view of the north facade of the parking deck. This is about the best I could get of the west facade. This is a view looking to the west from the crosswalk on Northwest Street. You can see the parking deck is here, the historic landmark property here. This is a view again from Northwest Street. And this is from the intersection of Northwest and Edenton, looking north towards the parking deck. And staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions. And the applicants do have a presentation, which you can just scroll.
Hi, Madam Chair, committee members. My name again is Jennifer Ashton. I'm an attorney with Longleaf Law Partners. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to turn the presentation over to our project architect in just a moment, but just to introduce our development team, we have Greg Sandroder, who is the developer and also here on behalf of the owner tonight. And then we have Chris Bailey, our project architect. And I will now turn it over to Chris. Thank you. Sorry. Yes, Greg first. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for hearing our case. I'm Greg Sandor with HM Partners. Just briefly, we very much appreciate the good work you're doing hearing us tonight. Just interestingly, I was the original developer of the historic rehab of this project back in 1988. At that time, Carolina Power and Light owned it. And this historic powerhouse building, as you probably know, it was the first place in Raleigh that generated electricity for Raleigh. And they had steam-fired, I should say coal-fired steam boilers there. Rail cars would come by, dump the coal right into the basement.
think of what a tough job it was if you were working in the basement shoveling that coal into the boilers. And so CP&L owned it. We at that time, the properties were boarded up and not used. We rehabbed them to where you see they are today. And so it was a lot of fun to work on, both this one and across the street on the garage building. Specifically tonight with the parking deck, we developed that deck so it could be expanded in the future, and that future day has arrived. So I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you again for hearing our case. I'd like to turn it over to Chris.
Thank you. Again, my name is Chris Bailey, architect with Gensler, and we'd like to walk you through a executive summary, which is essentially a condensed version of the presentation that you guys have reviewed. We tried to distill down the most relevant and pertinent aspects of the presentation into something a bit more concise. So to start, we wanted to give some key considerations about the project background. And Mr. Sandroider touched on a couple of these, that he is the original developer and is now the same developer proposing the deck expansion. The expansion provides daytime parking for the 400H project on Hillsborough Street. The expansion will also provide additional night and weekend parking for the Powerhouse invitees and guests. The deck is a non-historic and non-contributing structure. The deck was originally constructed to provide parking for the historic redevelopment and designed to be expanded in the future, and the expansion is part of the original plan. Next, some project characteristics associated with the new expansion. First, to note, the deck is completely detached from the historic building. It is isolated in the rear loading trash service area of the historic building, and it is located approximately 207 feet from the historic building's front door to the face of the parking deck, and approximately 93 feet from the historic building's rear door to the face of the parking deck. The expanded deck, so the deck with the vertical expansion, is not visible from most sightlines of the historic building, and we have some three-dimensional views that we will show you to demonstrate that. The deck is not included as an element of historic significance in the 1998 designation ordinance. The expanded deck's exposed steel design reflects the industrial history of the site. Furthermore, the exposed steel on the deck is galvanized, like the steel that's used in the existing substation and in portions of the historic building. So here we have a site plan with West Jones Street to the north. So this is oriented with north up on the page. The historic building is highlighted in red. To the right, you can see the non-historic electrical substation. To the south, the non-historic trash and loading. And further south, the non-historic parking deck with the proposed 3-level vertical expansion. It's worth noting that the expansion is vertical only, that we are not altering the footprint of the existing parking garage. And we have our dimensions shown here as well that I referenced earlier. Here we included a contextual slide, so just a Google Earth image showing some of the adjacent properties in the Glenwood South area. The next slide here is a sightline study. So this is a cross-section through the site. The section is cut from north to south, and in this case, looking west. So you would be looking towards the railroad track. And this shows the garage with the 3 vertical expanded levels. And in this case, the view is taken from the scale figure on the far right side of the page, someone standing on West Jones Street at the far side of the sidewalk. And the gray line illustrates the sight line at the lowest point of the existing historic building. So the historic building has a high portion and a low portion, and this sight line is at the low valley of the lower portion. And you can see that it just barely clips the corner of the expanded parking garage, so there's a very limited portion of the garage that you can see from that vantage point. The red line indicates the sight line at the taller portion of the historic building, where you can see that there is no vantage point at the taller portion where you can see the expanded garage. Next, we have a similar section. This is cut the same way, looking to the west, but with the scale figure in this case on Edenton Street. And really of importance here, the gray sight line demonstrates that the existing garage from that vantage point blocks any view of the historic building. And so obviously the additional vertical expansion will have no view of the historic building from this vantage point. And lastly, we have some contextual images with the parking garage modeled in 3 dimensions and overlaid to show the relationship after the proposed expansion would be built. So the top left photo is the existing condition. This is taken from West Jones Street at the Northwest Street intersection. And the bottom right photo, you can see in white the parking garage in 3 dimensions overlaid. And so from this vantage point, the garage is behind the electrical substation, but not behind the historic building, which you can see to the right side of the page in this view. Next, we have a perspective on West Jones Street, looking directly south at the front elevation of the historic building. This is essentially the sight line that we looked at in one of the section diagrams. And on the bottom right, you can see that there's a very small portion of the garage that is visible above that low roof valley, but it's otherwise mostly obscured. This vantage point, again, from West Jones Street, looking down the alley drive, which is currently used for access to the existing parking garage. And again, in the bottom right image, you'll see the 3D parking garage in the background. And again, this is where it's of importance to note that the face of that expanded garage is 207 feet back from the face of the existing historic structure. Last, we have some existing condition photos taken from Edenton Street looking north. And these just illustrate again that from this vantage point, the existing historic structure is not visible. So that concludes our executive summary, and at this time we welcome any questions you may have. We also have the remainder of the slides that you guys have seen before. If we need to flip to any of those, I'm happy to flip through that as needed.
Thank you. Are there any questions for anyone on the applicant team? Okay. All right. Is there anyone else present that would like to speak for or against this application? Okay. With that, I will close the public hearing and turn to internal discussion.
I think it's a no-brainer. I agree with staff comments.
Agreed.
Okay, great. Janine or Ian, do you want to try a motion on this one? We've gotten a lot of motions from this side.
I can do it. Based upon the information that has been presented in the evidentiary hearing and on the application, altering a non-historic parking deck is not incongruous in concept according to guidelines 1.3.1, 0.12, 3.4.2, 3.4.3, 3.4.4, 3.4.5, and the following facts 1 through 13.
Hey.
Second. Second, okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, Michelle, that time. You said aye, right?
Aye.
Okay, and that's unanimous. Is there a follow-up?
I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued with the following conditions 1 through 3.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that is unanimous. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us so late. We appreciate
Thank you
it.
for your endurance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. The only item we have under other business is a date for training, retreating
Hello.
Hi.
I don't have an actual date yet, but I wanted to bring it up. I know we had talked about it generally via email, and hopefully we'd be setting something up in person. I think that we should go ahead and set something up. I know you had talked about some potential topics having to do related to your the joint meeting you had with DRAC and some ideas around that. I think that's good. I do think that we also need to have at least a portion of that include RAS and give you some heads up and some training on some tweaks that are coming down the pike, changes to some of how we're doing our staff reports and recent case law that may affect how we're doing things. So it's a little bit two-pronged. I can send out a doodle poll if you're amenable to that, but I thought if I could generally get, well, there may not be a generally good time. And do you want this to be in the evening after work? Do you want it to be in the middle of the day? Do you want it to be on a weekend?
What's the duration typically?
It has varied. Now, when they were in person, it would be like 2.5 hours, and we'd feed you, and we'd talk while we ate.
I like the food thought. That's
I know. I mean, we could, have it be 2.5 hours with a half-hour break in between, so you can get. It's really how much time. I mean, I think 2 hours of discussion is, I think, good. Any more than that, and I think you're going to get exhausted and overwhelmed. Any less than that, I think we'll run out of time.
Okay.
So that is my suggestion, and whether or not you want to break it up with the food on your own, since this will need to be virtual, you can do that.
You're saying this will be a virtual meeting?
This would be a virtual. I'm sorry. That's what. Yeah. No. No, sorry. We had hoped it was going to be in person.
So who's going to deliver the food?
We can all plan to get the same thing.
Nice. That's so cute. Right. Everybody open your sandwich.
Right.
I'll say for myself, it's very hard for me to have, I suppose with enough notice, I can take time out of work. And then I'll also argue the opposite. It makes it a very long day sometimes. We pack those meetings on after work. So, but my general availability is typically Monday afternoon or Friday afternoons are my most flexible times if we do it during work.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with the Friday as far as most flexible during the workday, like the Friday afternoon time.
And that's the one time I'm not available.
Oh, man.
So maybe the evening?
And 2 hours is, I think, doable.
We've done more than that today.
That's right.
Well, I could potentially do like Monday afternoon if there was enough advance notice on the date.
Right. I mean, we're going to want to pull it together, so I'm thinking it's at least it's going to be 3 weeks out.
Okay.
Well, and just to throw a rock in that, virtual, actually, I could do it whenever. But
Okay.
10th through the 25th, I'm up in Maine.
Okay.
But I could definitely do that remotely one evening.
Okay, I will. So
Is 3 weeks out the week of the 20th of September?
say that again.
Is that the week of the 20th of September?
I
Okay.
just threw that out. I didn't have a date. Let's see. Hold on.
You were going to chair for me that COA because I'm out of the state at that.
3 weeks out from this week would be the 13th through the 17th.
Yeah.
Friday the 17th would be 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely should not have it our COA week. So yeah.
No.
Agreed.
So
the 13th we are potentially.
okay, so maybe the 13th, and if not the 13th, then we should go to the 27th.
Are you
Okay.
back for Shay for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And not that it matters as much if I am there, but
I
I'm not
know.
available the 27th or the 4th.
I know, because you're going on vacation. But
I'm
I'm
gonna have
glad
some
you're
fun.
going on vacation. We'll record it. Okay, so 9, 13, or 9. I already lost it. 27. Okay. I will look and make sure that there's not something weird. So would you want it to run from like 4 to 6? Or later in the evening? Earlier?
I selfishly would love to do probably 3 to 5, just so I could pick up my kid at daycare.
So do it starting when?
3 to 5.
Oh, 3 to 5.
But if I needed to do 4 to 6, I could probably make it work.
I like 3 to 5 also.
Okay.
Yeah.
I second that.
Okay. Just block out that chunk, you know.
Okay, I will send it out there. Sandy's not here today, so I want to make sure that we get her input.
Yep.
And I do, when at all possible, want to make sure that the alternates are also available, so they're up to speed. So I will check with Travis. I will send something out, and you can reply in case you get home and look at your calendars and realize, oh no, what I said really isn't going to work. You'll have a chance to think about it.
Okay.
Not on the spot.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Hopefully that helped, though, to just get a couple
yes, that
dates for
absolutely does
everybody.
help.
Okay.
And of course, want to make sure Raz is available.
Yes,
Since I
absolutely.
just said he's going to be there. Surprise.
I have a question real quick. Raz, we got an email from you this afternoon.
Yes.
Is there any information you want to share or anything that you want to or that you can share relative to that?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. City Attorney's Office is handling it.
Okay.
I had some brief conversations with them about that. And that's probably all we should talk about.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question about when we get copious amounts of information in this meeting. And I actually don't want to take this home. Like,
Right.
what's the deal? And,
We'll take them.
And also,
Thank you.
will this ever be scanned so that I don't lose, documentation if I need to? Like, what happens with the stuff that we get today?
We keep a copy, we'll scan a copy.
Okay, so it's
For copy.
reference if I really want to dig into this one day.
Yes.
I still can. Okay, so can
Paper
we-
and virtual is now our mantra.
Does the city of Raleigh want to have this, the binder and any of this?
Yeah, we'll probably take it
Recycle,
apart and
reuse.
recycle
We
it.
have a cart. If somebody doesn't want to walk out the door, just stick it in the cart over here. We'll take care of it.
I would like to think somebody could reuse this binder. It's
Yeah,
brand new.
absolutely. I mean, the waste
You'll
is
get it
not.
back at the retreat someday.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right, perfect, thank you.
And where are the recycling bins around here?
There's one just in that little corner behind you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And I want to say thank you to Ian for filling in again for our commissions. I was joking that he's a regular as he rotates through, which I know it's a lot to ask these meetings. So anyway, thank you for showing up.
Thank you.
Sorry, I need to adjourn us, right?
Oh.
Okay.
Without objection.
Oh, without objection. Any objection? This meeting is adjourned. Any objection? Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.